Well, as you can see, we're still on the $1 Million Highway here in Colorado.
Wow.
Just.
Did they film the long trailer here?
It looks like they did. I mean, you watch that movie, and I swear this is where they filmed it. Because it's the most improbable piece of road ever built.
No kidding.
Otto Mears was completely nuts.
Yeah, no kidding.
And the fact that he could just come up here and go, well, of course I can build a road. It's what I do. And so he just builds this road that anywhere, and of course probably several people have fallen to their death going off the high side. But I digress. We're not up here to play on the road this week. We will be playing on the road next week. That's next week's show. But this week we're still at the Narrow Gauge Reunion, and this week we're going to watch the Friends of the Cumbers and Toltec drive 3 logs into the ground with their pile driver.
Wow.
These guys restore freight equipment. It's what they do. They're an association with the museum there, the Cumbers and Toltec Railroad. So while the Cumbers and Toltec is really just interested in taking passengers out on scenic runs, the Friends are much more interested in restoring equipment, especially freight equipment and other non-revenue equipment and so on, that can be used just for having fun with.
Wow.
And so these trains that we've been running at the Narrow Gauge Reunion are freight trains, and the reason we can even have freight trains is because the Friends of the Cumbers and Toltec have restored a bunch of freight cars, and they've got them perfect. They're just immaculate and gorgeous and wonderful. And they've also done some of the other equipment here, the rotary snowplow, and but the pile driver, they've rebuilt the whole pile driver, and they can hook that to the C-18 and drive some pilings into the ground. So they're going to show us how that works. In other words, they're going to be screwing around with the pile driver, and we get to watch. So check this out. Well, for the last 2 weeks, we've been knocking about the Narrow Gauge Reunion on the Cumbers and Toltec Railroad in New Mexico and Colorado. It's been a lot of fun. They've been running steam trains, and last week we were riding around on a Rio Grande Southern Goose. So that was a lot of fun, too. Now, the reason that the Narrow Gauge Reunion was able to run this freight train is because there's a group called the Friends of the Cumbers and Toltec, and they go about restoring the old freight equipment as well as some of the non-revenue equipment like the rotary snowplow, or in this case, the pile driver. You can see the pile driver here. It's the gray piece of equipment in the train to our left. And they're hauling that down to Cumbers Summit, and they're going to be screwing around with that, driving in some pilings. All railroads have had to have a certain amount of non-revenue equipment that they use simply for maintaining their track or other facilities. The Friends of the Cumbers and Toltec have two rotary snowplows, and they've also fixed up a lot of the original freight equipment that you see around the yards in Chama. The Cumbers and Toltec Railroad focuses entirely on running passenger service for their scenic railroad behind large engines like this one. This is a K36. So whatever historic preservation is being done, even some of the buildings, is being done by the Friends of the Cumbers and Toltec. Okay, let's take a look at the pile driving operation, or screwing around as we like to say. The pile driver is connected to the C-18 locomotive by this hose. This is a steam line, and it's tied into the steam dome by replacing out one of the pop valves. The steam is used to run this little single-cylinder steam engine, and the steam engine runs all of the operations of the pile driver. It's also necessary to run the steam locomotive itself, as the pile driver is incapable of moving itself around, and so moving it up and down the track becomes the responsibility of the locomotive. The steam engine is connected through a transmission that operates all manner of different pulleys, In this case, it's being used to raise the boom. Now the boom is mostly balanced when the weight is at the far end, and it takes just a little bit of energy here to stand the thing up. Once the boom is upright, it needs to be locked in place. Now there's a ladder that runs up to the top of the boom, and that will act as a brace. But the ladder itself has to be locked into position with these two steel braces that connect to the frame of the unit. They are then bolted and pinned in place because you really don't want this thing coming loose while you're driving pilings. Now, we had quite a group of people watching this whole operation and videoing it. We even had a drone in the air filming. Okay, back to the pile driver. Now, once the boom is locked in place, the locomotive is used to pull the pile driver back to your supply of pilings, which are just some logs with one end sharpened, sort of like a pencil. Much easier to drive it into the ground if one end is sharpened. Pilings were used for a lot of different things on the railroad. Quite often they'd just be driven into a stream bed to form a short bridge over a small stream. But they could also be used as the first layer in a massive, massive trestle that would stand on nothing more than pilings. It just simply depends on the quality of the soil that you're driving the pilings into. That will determine how strong the piling is once it's driven into the ground. In a perfect world, the piling would be driven all the way down to bedrock, so it's standing on solid rock below the ground. Okay, once the pile driver arrives at the pile of piles, anyway, you pick one up, and that's done by attaching a cable to the piling and then using the winch and the steam engine to pull it up into place in the boom. Once the piling is in the boom, then the pile driver is moved via steam engine to the location where the piling will be driven into the ground. This is very, very critical. You need to put the piling in the very, very, very specific place that the piling belongs, and also drive it into the ground at the exact angle called out for in the plans. This has all been done ahead of time with a transit, and in theory, the exact location for the piling should be marked at this point. As the Friends of the Cumbers and Toltec are actually just screwing around here, they can sort of put the piling anywhere they darn well please. So they're just going to pick a spot and drive it into the ground. Once the pile driver is in position, the entire top superstructure is rotated on the frame, swinging the boom around to the location that the piling will be driven. Otherwise, you'd be stuck with driving the piling directly between the rails, and well, that just wouldn't work out very well, would it? Okay, now that the point of the piling is in the exact location that the piling belongs, some of the strap holding it in place has to be loosened so you can give it one mighty thunk with the hammer. At this point, the boom can be rotated back and forth and try to get the thing at the exact angle that it needs to be at, and then give it another smack. Now, if you've established the correct angle at this point, you can just cut loose and start hammering the crap out of it. Now, at this point, it looks like the machine is going to destroy itself, and frankly, I have no idea why it does not destroy itself. Every piece of wood and bolt and joint is flexing in some direction or other, and the whole thing is shaking violently, and the crew is getting seasick. At any rate, before the whole machine falls apart, the piling finds its way to the bottom of its travel, and you're ready to back away and go get another piling. Now, it is critical that these pilings not be driven in farther than the plans call for. They need to be left a little long so that you can cut the top off to level the whole thing out. The superstructure is now rotated back into the transport position so that the whole unit can be backed up to the pile of piles, and grab another pile and proceed to drive that into the ground. There's a rather large gear mechanism here that rotates the superstructure. Most of this stuff is done with cables and pulleys, but rotating the superstructure is done with gears. No doubt a crew actually working with a rig like this would move really fast, and they probably were able to drive several pilings in per hour. It's really cool that the Friends of the Cumbers and Toltec have rebuilt this thing. It doesn't really serve a purpose other than screwing around and, well, I guess historic preservation. But it's just nifty to see. At any rate, once you're done driving pilings, you do have to put the boom back into the carry position, and it doesn't really like going back into the carry position, so you give it a bunch of yanks. But again, it's more or less balanced when the weight is at the bottom, and the trick is to just kind of get it started, and then you can just pull it down by hand. Once the boom is in the saddles, it can be locked into position, and then the entire rig can be attached back to its idler flat car and stuck in a train and hauled off to some other location. The C-18 involved in this operation is from Durango. It's the 315. It's been brought up here to Cumbers for the narrow gauge reunion. Was restored there by the Durango Railroad Historical Society. Sort of a similar group to the Friends of Cumbers and Toltec, only they restore stuff over on the Durango and Silverton. But the idea is kind of the same. Well, the pilings did get driven into the ground, not terribly straight or anything, but they did get driven into the ground. The key is a good deal of fun was had, a certain amount of, well, historical reenactment took place, and most of all, no one was killed. A bit later, somebody's going to come back with a chainsaw and give the pilings a very, very, very short cropped haircut so that nobody trips over them in the middle of the night. And the pile driver will get hauled back down to the yards at Cumbers, ready for another day of screwing around sometime in the future. Well, that's really fun that these guys have a pile driver to play with.
It was like boom.
I swore that thing was just going to destroy itself.
Yeah,
I mean, the whole thing's rocking and twisting, and yet apparently that's just how the thing always worked.
Right.
That
is amazing.
It's kind of a strange piece of equipment that always seems to be in the process of destroying itself while driving pilings into the ground. These guys are maybe not the world's best pile drivers.
I think they're learning. A lot of that's like they're reenacting, and so they're learning.
They're
how to
learning.
do it
Well,
like our ancestors did.
They told me half the guys on the crew have never even run the thing before.
Right.
So you know, it's a process. They're screwing around.
Exactly.
If they were doing this for a job and they were driving pilings in every single day, I'm sure that they'd be very, very, very good at it. And,
right.
As it is, they're just sort of screwing around. So the key here is
first time for everything.
First time for everything, and the key here is don't get killed.
Right.
And if you do something wrong, don't get caught.
Right.
But that's what they're doing. They're just kind of screwing around with the thing, and that's just incredibly cool. Mm-hmm. And it's incredibly cool that we have a group like the Friends of the Cumbers and Toltec to restore all this equipment and make it all work and screw around with it while we watch, because then we get to see how the whole piece of business works. We're going to have to come up one time when they're running their rotary snowplow.
Oh.
And blasting through snow drifts with that, because they do that every spring. They have to clear the track, and well, they have a rotary snowplow.
So we can get out.
Ta-da! Yeah.
We're up there in the winter time.
Yeah, so maybe we could get them to do it the driveway.
Oh, gee, yeah.
That would be fun.
On the phone.
Bring the rotaries out. Well, okay, that probably won't work out. Well, we're going to be back here again next week, not with the narrow gauge reunion. We're pretty much done with the narrow gauge reunion, but we have some more narrow gauge screwing around that we want to get done here, specifically dealing in part with the $1 Million Highway that we're riding on here, and go into a little depth on there, but also some old grades that are around here and some of the history that's around here, and meet some fun and weird and interesting people. So we're back here again next week just to continue screwing around with all of this fun stuff. Well, if you haven't been over to the channel to subscribe, you want to get over to the channel and you want to subscribe. And while you're there, you should look at a bunch of other movies, because geez, there's 165 or I don't know how many. I haven't counted them up lately, but there's over 160, I think, movies
Heading
there.
for 200.
Heading for 200, we're getting there.
Right.
And you should watch a bunch of them, because there's all kinds of fun and exciting and interesting, and mostly railroad, but not all railroad. There's all kinds of crazy stuff. So you should watch all kinds of crazy stuff while cruising around on the channel. And while you're there, you should also subscribe to the channel, because that's the cool thing to do, and then you'll be notified whenever we upload the show, which is every Sunday morning, so it isn't too hard to figure out. But you still get notification, and the notification will tell you what we uploaded, so you can make a decision if it's so brilliant you have to watch it immediately, or you can put off watching it for 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, that's all part of the notification. And it all starts by clicking on the blue button, which is appearing zoink right now. Blue button, and it says subscribe, and it takes you to the channel, and it makes you a subscriber. Piece of cake.
Wow.
Well, we're not sure how you found this fun, exciting, and interesting movie on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring, and we will see you here again next week while we screw around some more on the $1 Million Highway.
Yeah.
See you then.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.